Discussion here. And, Tim, early on in this game, there were moments where the Chiefs had a chance to get the Bucs off the field offensively, but penalties here, penalties there, kept drives alive, and Tampa was able to capitalize on those penalties. What did you make of those mistakes in terms of the impact it had, not just in the first half, but the game in general?
Well, it had a huge impact on him. I think at one point it was like 8 penalties for 90 yards or 95 yards in the first half. It's just hard to win that way, in any game in the National Football League, much less the Super Bowl when you're playing against a really good football team. And you think about when some of those penalties happened. You have an offsides on a field goal that led to extending the drive that led to points. Prior to that, you had an interception that was overturned because of pass interference. And then before the half, you had 2 pass interference penalties that basically led to a touchdown right before the half with about, inside a minute left. So I think when you just look at that, you're just putting yourself so far behind, and having nothing to do with what your opponent is doing. And it was out of character for the team, and it certainly hurt them.
Well, let me speak for the Chiefs fans very quickly because I can hear them from the middle of America right now. In some eyes, some of those penalties, Tim, were ticky-tack, especially that one holding call that negated a turnover where Matthew had intercepted Tom Brady off of that pick pass. There was another one that was somewhat questionable. Did you think the refs maybe weren't letting the boys play, so to speak, in this game early?
Well, it's interesting because you go back to, championship weekend and even the divisional round, there was a lot of talk about the officials, quote, letting guys play. I think you've got to officiate consistently, through the regular season, into the postseason and the Super Bowl. I don't think you change the rules. Look, you could make an argument that things were called less throughout times in the playoffs than they were tonight. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. But I would say that I do think that some of the penalties were standard with how they would call things during the season. You mentioned the interception from Tyrann Mathieu that was negated because of pass interference. You maybe have the ability to say, look, that was contact after the ball was tipped. Look, you may have a case there. It's hard for the official to decipher that. You look at the pass interference on Mike Evans before the end of the first half, where Breeland's feet get tangled up with Mike Evans, and then as he trips, kind of the rest of his body makes contact with Evans. The official throws a flag. Look, I can't say that I loved either one of those calls. At the same time, you do have to understand what the official is looking at. And so, okay, the saying is, do business as business is being done, Michael.
Yeah.
And if they're calling those, pass interference, then you got to take your hands off of them. And I think, they weren't able to do that.
Well, let's take a look at some of the numbers as related to the penalties there, Tim, in the first half. 8-1 would be the discrepancy, in the words of Chiefs fans. 95 yards on those 8 penalties, but it's not just the yardage, it's also the moment they happen and able to keep drives alive where the Bucs were able to score on those drives as opposed to maybe getting off the field in a 4th down situation. But that right there put the Chiefs behind it. But here's the deal. Kansas City being behind in a playoff game or even a Super Bowl is not that big of a deal over the last couple of years. They've overcome those deficits time and time again. But this one, they just couldn't do it. And so now we have to give credit to that Tampa Bay defense. And I made this comment earlier on social media. If you look at the two, I felt as if the Buccaneers defense embarrassed the Chiefs defense because what they did against Patrick Mahomes compared to what the Chiefs did to Tom Brady, night and day. Why was Tampa so effective against Mahomes and company?
Because Kansas City couldn't pass protect. I think on 56, pass, dropbacks, Patrick Mahomes was pressured on 29 of them. I mean, he had no time. They could not pass protect Patrick Mahomes, which is why he didn't look like the Patrick Mahomes that we're used to seeing. Look, his big plays, in the first half were when he scrambled on a 3rd and 7 for a first down or a 3rd and 10 for a first down. They could get nothing going down the field. Tampa Bay did a good job of not giving up the big play, and they were able to get home. They dialed up a few pressures that caught Mahomes off guard. They weren't able to alter the protection to get it picked up. But other than that, it was a lot of, guys up front getting beat, losing their individual matchups. And so I know a lot was made about, offensive linemen being out for Kansas City coming into this game. it had an impact. Plain and simple, it did. They could not pass protect, and that was a problem because they didn't have time to get the ball out and down the field.
By the way, you see the news right there across the bottom of the screen as Tim was talking. Tom Brady was named Super Bowl MVP as expected for a 5th time, 7 championships, 5 Super Bowl MVPs for Tom Brady. Again, that's most all time. It was most before winning his 5th because Joe Montana's 2nd there with 3, just adding to the legacy for Tom Brady as the greatest NFL player of all time. If we can go back to that Chiefs offense, they've been so versatile throughout the year, whether it's Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Edwards-Helaire. Like, they have all these weapons. But as you mentioned earlier, Tim, some of the things that that Tampa was doing just wasn't allowed there because the pressure was too great. How much credit do you give to Todd Bowles and that defense based on what they saw the first time they played him in Week 12 to make those adjustments necessary, especially in the secondary here in Super Bowl 55?
Well, you have to give him a ton of credit, Michael, because I think that, you go back to that earlier matchup, there was a lot of hay being made, in the passing game on stuff down the field. They gave up big plays. I think it was clear that they were going to play deep in the first half, and say, look, if you're going to complete a pass, it's not going to be over our head. They were able to do that. And listen, part of what you do, too, is, you put a plan together for the opponent that you're facing. And because of that, they decided to come after Patrick Mahomes with backup offensive linemen, and it was the right plan. And so I think a lot of credit. Look, both coordinators, Leftwich on offense and Todd Bowles on defense, did a tremendous job.
Yeah, what a staff that Bruce Arians had put together there in Tampa, and you bring in a quarterback like Tom Brady, and you get a Super Bowl championship. Number 7 for Brady, 5th MVP. What a performance it was for Tampa Bay. Tim Hasselbeck, appreciate the time. I'm Michael Lee.
Sports Center.
Hey there, welcome to this special edition of Sports Center following Super Bowl 55. I'm Michael Eaves. After 6 Super Bowl titles in New England and a legacy as the greatest quarterback and maybe greatest player of all time, Tom Brady has won yet another Super Bowl title in his very first year with the Buccaneers. 31-9 is the final as they take down the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs in a dominating performance by the Buccaneers on both sides of the football. Offensively with Brady, we'll talk about him, but also the defense be able to hold the Chiefs to just 9 points, one of the more potent offenses we've had in the league in the last several years. To get a little deeper into this, we bring in Tim Hasselbeck. And Tim, I want to dive into the X's and O's of this game and how it got to 31-9 and things of that nature. But because it is Tom Brady and because of what he accomplished in his very first year in Tampa, a team that hadn't sniffed the playoffs in quite some time, at least a legitimate chance of winning a title, here he is now. 7 championships. That's more than any other franchise in the NFL. The Steelers and the Patriots each have 6 to him. Now Brady has 7. As you sit back and sort of absorb this, what comes to your mind?
I mean, it's just hard to even comprehend, to be honest with you. When you think about just what he's accomplished, how he came into the league, how he took over New England, to have the success in New England and the debate about whether or not it was the coach or the player, and then to do it in the year that was this year, which started with throwing and working out at local high schools and getting run off the field to get to this point. It's incredible, Michael. I mean, it's in some ways, there aren't really words to describe what he's accomplished.
I know people are going to be talking about this for quite some time over the next several days, as they should. But when we have a chance to experience this level of greatness, Tim, in the moment, whether it was Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or LeBron James currently, now it is Tom Brady and the impact that he has, not just on franchises, but the league as a whole. And you take a look at this game in particular, a couple of guys who scored the touchdowns in this game only came to Tampa because of Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, the influence, the impact, how one player has made such a huge difference. Look, that's been reserved for other sports. That has not been something that's worked ever in football. It just hasn't. So I think when you look at what has been done this year in Tampa Bay with Brady, and as you say, Michael, the influence on other players, obviously a guy that caught 2 touchdown passes tonight in Rob Gronkowski, we've never seen it. We've seen people try to do things like this, but it's never had this type of result at the end.
Let's talk a little about him specifically in this game, Tim, because if you look at his performance in the box score, I mean, this was efficient. 21 for 29, 201 yards, and those 3 touchdowns. From an X's and O standpoint tonight, what did you see in Tom's game?
I think the big thing is that he was seeing it perfectly. What I mean by that was, a lot of times at the line of scrimmage, they would have packaged plays. You hear him alert to something else. The thing that Kansas City gave people a hard time with this season was their zone blitz pressures. They'd find a way to attack your pass protection and get home to the